Good day. Well, here I am hanging out in Barrie, Ontario, my motorhome, the TARDIS. Lynn and I have it parked out in a place called Elmvale at my friend Gary's house, and our trailer's out there too. I'm hanging out in my parents' house because it's just very, very close to town, because it's in town, whereas the motorhome is quite a ways away. The reason we've chose to stay here at my parents' home is they're not here. So there's lots of parties. No, it's both of them ended up in hospital. About a week after we got here, my dad Jim was called to be into the hospital because his blood was septic, and he's since contacted and has pneumonia. In all the excitement of getting ready to go to the hospital, my mom slipped and fell and fractured her hip. They're not doing surgery on her. They think it'll mend up well enough. So it's been daily visits over there to the hospital to see them. It's been rather hard on Lynn and I emotionally to see these people in this state. But here we are, taking care of the house, driving Dad's car, partying on the patio. That's what we tell them anyhow. It's given me some good opportunities in the hospital. They keep changing their roommates every few days, different roommate. And so I get to talk to them because you want to be polite, And I'm being Chuck. I'm always looking for opportunities just to share about who Jesus is in my life. And I've got to pray with a lot of these other patients. And it's been good that way. There's been some benefits. They're starting to really find some things out about my parents' health. And hopefully the trust is when they return home, they'll be in better shape than when we went there. But we've been busy. We've been holding up to what we thought we would do. We've been out to some events. In May, we went to Fort Erie, to the largest swap meet in Ontario, and did very, very well there. I remember giving away some Bibles and some tracts and talking to lots of people. And some of those visits were pretty surprising. And because of the nature of the clubs that some of these men are involved in, I would care not to say in a public forum like this who those men were that I got to talk to. Then we went to Lucan, Ontario. Lucan is a small town, but maybe you've heard of the Black Donnellys and kind of like the Hatfield and McCoy thing. Well, Canada has its own version with the Black Donnellys. And there's a wonderful motorcycle shop there called Hogtown. And they put on a show and shine and swap meet. And we were really impressed, did really, really well there. The owners were very welcoming, knowing what we were doing and what we were putting together. Again, I couldn't get over the contacts we have there. Every time we do one of these events, I look for one of those divine appointments that only God can set up. And every time we find a person like that. Then we went to Huronia Airport. Why an airport? Well, because it was a large area and the Canadian Vintage Motorcycle Association had a swap meet there. My goodness, there's some lovely old motorcycles out there. I finally got to walk around so I could look at some of them, but for the most time I'm standing there sharpening knives and talking to people. Gave away Bibles there, talked to more people about the Lord. Had a Christian man just really, really saying how badly they need a Christian motorcycle riding group here in this area of Ontario. It was a good meeting. I got parked beside a man that I knew some 40 years ago and listened to him prattle on about how great he is. Coming up in Lyle, Ontario, a tiny little wee place. Wouldn't be 1,000 people there, but they attract about 500 bikers that come out. The Ghost Riders Riding Association, I believe it is putting on a big bike show. It's their 7th, and they attract 300 to 500 riders there, and they've invited my wife and I to come down and put up our booth and sharpen knives. And then just the next day, I'm preaching at Living Word Bible Church in Angus, one of our denominational churches. In between, I'm spending some time in the garage working on making knives. This one's out of a file. So things haven't exactly turned out the way we thought. Things have changed. And it really poses some questions when you're wondering and saying, but God, I thought this was going to happen, and I thought that was going to happen. Doing my morning devotions and just reflecting on the things that God is doing, I came across a scripture floating around in my mind. I had to look it up and find out where it was, and it was the book of Hebrews, chapter 12, verse 8. And it says, by faith, Abraham, when he was called, obeyed, by going out to a place where he was to receive an inheritance, and he went out not knowing where he was going. That's me, not knowing where I'm going. It seems like you're wandering around sometimes just thinking, yeah, I have an idea where I'm going. When we get in the motorhome, we pretty much get lost once a day. And we think we got a plan, and you're trying to follow that plan and go here and go there and do all the things you're supposed to, and find out that sometimes the plan don't work out, not knowing where you're going. And it's been pretty challenging at times because we're not always sure what we're going to find down the road and whether or not a certain event is going to work out or not. And we go, and every time we find out that it works out better than we thought it could, and that God has been there with us and supporting us and helping us. Another scripture that came up in the book of James chapter 4 says this: "Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a city and spend a year there and engage in business and make a profit. Yet you do not know what your life was like tomorrow. You are just a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live, and we will do this, and we will do that." And that's pretty much what it's been about, you know. You think, well, we're going to go here, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. And it doesn't always work out that way. It's if the Lord wills. And all along this journey, my wife Lynn and I have learned that if the Lord wills, we will do this. If the Lord wills, we will do that. This time in Barrie, Ontario, it hasn't worked out like we thought. Sure, we've gotten around to the events, and there's been more events that we could do, but you know, the whole thing with the family and what's been happening with my parents hasn't worked out like we thought. If the Lord wills, and what we have to continue to do is just trust that the Lord is behind all this, and He's pushing us on and giving us encouragements along the way, and that we're following Him. So, no, Chuck doesn't have some great grand plan. He's trying to follow the Lord. I'd ask you, try and follow the Lord. Just turn your life over to Him, pursue Him, and know that He's got your hand, and He'll guide and direct you. And as Lynn and I do this, I'd ask you that you would support us and that you'd be praying for us. God bless you. Please pray for my parents, Barbara and Jim. They could use a divine touch from God. God bless you.